Hey everybody, Teching here. So I got this word-a-day calendar at the start of 2023. Usually I forget about it, but every now and then I'll flip a page and I'll see like an interesting word and I'll try to incorporate that into the review. Because we all know I have a very broad and diverse, what's the word I'm thinking of here? Vocabulary. Yeah, broad and diverse vocabulary. So, that's because of the word-a-day calendar. That's where I got metaphysical from. Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, I turned the page today and I just kind of laughed, and so this is the word I have to work with now on March 20th. By the way, happy first day of spring, but yeah, I look at that and I'm like, okay, first of all, that's not a word of the day. That's like 4 words of the day, but it's also pretty funny, so I'll try to make it work. I'll try to incorporate it into the video today somehow. Just take a look at the definition there, and yeah, actually, that might be easier than I originally thought, but yeah, we'll make that work somehow. I'm just going to put that over here. All right, so today's video, we're going to be talking about the reveal, of the Egghead, Traitor, So, Class A spoiler alert. If you don't want this to turn into a real dog and pony show... All right, that doesn't count. That doesn't even make any sense. I'll work it in later. But yeah, seriously, if you don't want to be spoiled on chapter 1078, and more importantly, if you don't want to be spoiled on who the reveal of the Egghead Traitor is at Egghead Island during the Egghead arc, you should probably stop right now and, I don't know, go outside. It's the first day of spring, which means it must be a nice, warm 36 degrees Fahrenheit with snow. Of course, I live in Pennsylvania, as it is. Okay, well, anyway, turns out, we good on spoilers? Okay, the reveal at the end of the last chapter was the traitor was York, the 6th satellite of Vegapunk. The Vegapunk that represents desire and greed. So there it is. But the mystery's not completely answered yet, because was York working alone? Was it really York to even begin with? What are her motivations? Well, I guess we'll have to look in to see. So basically what I did was I went back and I looked at all the chapters York appears in, which weren't very many. I essentially just went back and reread all of Egghead Island. It wasn't very long to get back up to where we are, but already fond memories of this arc. So... it's really interesting how Oda, now that we reveal that, like, York is the traitor, she is the one that at least shot Shaka. At least we could assume she was, because she had a pretty big hand cannon. She, like, fired at Shaka, because remember, York is huge. She's, like, the size of, like, Smoothie or Katakuri. So the pistol that she uses also has to be comparable to her size. So it's like a giant cannon, and Shaka just looked like he just got shot with, like, a normal-sized pistol. But I don't think there's anything there that Oda's really going to use as a twist. I mean, he might be like, hey, by the way, you knew that York was way too big. That gun she was using, there's no way that could have shot Shaka. She wasn't working alone. So maybe Oda will do a twist like that, but I doubt it. So in chapter 1065, that was the first reveal of York, okay? And that's when we got to see all of the Vegapunks proper. So the first introduction we have to York is that she is sitting in her little area. All the Vegapunks have a little area on the island, and her job as a member of the Vegapunks is to basically eat and drink and sleep and relieve herself for all the other Vegapunks, okay? You can kind of see why Vegapunk created her specifically, because he's like, okay, I'm a really busy guy. I need to split myself into 6 different bodies plus the main body so I can get more work done. And one of the annoying things I can imagine Vegapunk working on is like, man, this sucks, Quasar. I always have to stop working, so I have to eat and sleep, you know? So he created York. It's just like, all right, that is York's main job. Now, she is still referred to as Dr. York to the other members of Egghead, everybody that's responsible for providing food for her and everything like that. However, it doesn't really seem like she does much of anything. I would imagine all of the satellites have comparable intelligence because they're all created from Vegapunk's brain, but it doesn't seem like York really has any interest in doing science. You know, she's like, I will invent a new flavor, maybe something like that. She'll discover a new ice cream flavor or something like that. But beyond that, it seems like her jobs are eat and drink and sleep and poop and just wash, rinse, and repeat several times a day, in fact, okay? And so we saw that utilized in the chapter when Edison came up with a new idea, and he was like, oh, I'm famished. York, could you eat something for me? And then York will like, burger. And then Edison will be like, ah, that was delicious, yes. And then he goes to work, okay? So that's York the first time we see her. Now, the next time she shows up is chapter 1071. Now, this is when Vegapunk, the Stella body, was about to leave. This was before shit really hit the fan, and the Frontier Dome was acting all wonky and everything, and the Seraphim have yet to reach the lab and all that stuff. So this is right after Luffy leaves after his fight with Rob Lucci, and they manage to take that, like, rocket tunnel tube thing, and they get up to the Labosphere, and then Vegapunk's there, and he has his backpack, and he has all his satellites gathered, okay? So we see all of them together in one shot. We see Shaka, Lilith, Edison, Pythagoras, Atlas. Well, Atlas wasn't there because she was damaged after Lucci's fight, but we also see York there, and York is in the background, and nobody is paying attention to her. It is actually truly remarkable. If you go back and look at all the scenes, none of the other Vegapunks even reference her, honestly. She's just there. So she's in the background in chapter 1071 in that big group, all in the control room, ready to go, and then she's just, she's engorged after eating a bunch of food, and she's like, "What's going on, everybody? Oh, man, I'm tired." And then she just goes to sleep, okay? Nobody references her, not even comedically. It wasn't even like a thing where, like, Edison looks over at York and is just like, "Man, you're always sleepy, York." Da-da-da-da-da-da. Nothing like that even. It's like she's just there and they don't even reference her. And then that was the same chapter when Vegapunk has to call Stussy, although we didn't know it was Stussy at the time, just like, "Hey, can you help us?" And Stussy's like, "Of course, I was waiting for this order," okay? Now, it was also during this same chapter, chapter 1071, when the dome, the Frontier Dome, began to malfunction, okay? That was when the dome first malfunctioned, going down, allowing the Seraphim and Cypherpole to arrive, and then, whoop, go right back up, okay? So it was very clear. They're in the control room, and we're going to see in a second here, York is definitely messing with the dome from the control room in some way, locking out the rest of the satellites, preventing them from even overriding it later, okay? Now, that makes perfect sense, considering the fact that she's a Vegapunk, just like all the other ones, so maybe she might know a way to, like, lock out the Frontier Dome. But, like, in order to mess with that Frontier Dome, it had to be somebody really intelligent. It had to be somebody, one of the Vegapunks pretty much, or, like, one of the outlying factors was maybe, like, Judge or Caesar showing up. Somebody that knew, like, had the computer fruit or something. I don't know. Actually, could there be a computer fruit? Because computers, they didn't usually exist in One Piece, but now Vegapunk kind of created them. So if we're going along with the desires of, humans wanting that power, maybe a computer fruit, an internet fruit could exist in some form. Who knows? Anyway, so the dome goes down. So you can kind of see the logic there, where York is in the background eating, pretending to be asleep, and then Vegapunk's like, "Man, I'm going to need some extra help to get out of here, Quasar," and he calls up Stussy, and York would know about Stussy because, they all share the same brain, and so York's like, that's not good. Can't have them getting out of here. It might be too easy, so she just like turning off the Frontier Dome, and then everyone's like, "What? Why did the dome turn off?" And then now it's back up again. It's like, what? She's in the background. Nobody's paying attention to her. Nobody even views her as a threat, because why would they? She's a member of the Vegapunk satellites, just like all the other ones. They're all allies together. They share the same brain. Obviously, why would she be an enemy, right? Okay. So that makes sense. Then, in the next chapter, chapter 1074, so skipping a few chapters later, this is the chapter Mark III, when Sentomaru awakens all the Mark III pacifistas. This is where things get fun, all right? This is where Oda was really on the nose with this one, okay? So, at this point, now all of the Seraphim have attacked the lab initially. Edison comes out, gives them the order to stand down, so they do. Stussy has knocked out Kaku and Lucci at this point, so they're in the lab, chained up, and everybody's just kind of reconvening. And Shaka's there, and he's looking at the control panel, and he's like, "Okay, we have a lot of problems. Number one, the Stella body's missing, because he ran off with Bonnie at this point. The Seraphim are under control right now, but we can't lower the Frontier Dome, so we can't escape. We can't get out of here. A lot of problems going on here. Now, in the background, there is a double-page spread in this chapter, 1074. In the background, as Shaka is kind of giving this debrief to everybody around, all of the satellites as well as the Straw Hats, Atlas is also back up and running in this page. You see York, who has digested all of the food. She has slimmed down again, and she gets up, and she's kind of yawning and walking off to a random location. It really does seem like she just got up, and she's like, yeah, so I'm just gonna walk over here, everybody. Nope, once again, nobody pays attention to her. No one references her. No one looks over and is just like, "Where are you going, York? You better stay in the control room just to be safe." Nobody even acknowledges her. She just gets up and does the old, Random Joe. Wow, how long was I asleep? Oh, yeah, guys, I'm just going to wander over here. Don't mind me. You know what I mean? She literally pulls that, okay? Now, this is where things get a little confusing in terms of timelines, okay? So I'm gonna break this down here. I actually pulled up chapter 1074 just so we can go through this page by page. Okay, so the start of the chapter is the Pacifista Mark III. Those are really cool. All right, so you see York getting up, yawning, and then walking away. Now, at the same time this is happening, Shaka gets a radio call from Pythagoras, because Pythagoras is not with that group. Pythagoras is out scouting the lab trying to find the Stella body. So I'm just going to read this. You know, Shaka, it's Pythagoras. The third floor of building C seems empty. And then Shaka's like, okay, I see. Then try the next building, okay? So that's how that conversation went. So at this point, York is just leaving the control room, okay? She's not where Pythagoras is yet, but Shaka gives the order of like, oh, okay, so you were in this building and it's clear, okay, try the next building. So then we have some other scenes where all of the Straw Hats and the Vegapunks, they break up into their individual groups and they go. We see Luffy and Zoro there by themselves with Rob and Lucci still unconscious. Rob and Lucci, with Rob, Lucci, and Kaku still unconscious. They're hanging out on the couch. Then we have some stuff with Bonnie and Kuma during that chapter, the whole flashback, the memory bubble thing. And then we see Pythagoras exiting the building he was looking at, crossing, remember, it was like a bridge that was like separating the two buildings. It was like a catwalk, okay? So Pythagoras is walking across that catwalk to another building, and then you see the shadowy figure behind him. He turns, and he's like, and then boom, giant explosion, all right? Giant explosion. Then, the end of that chapter has nothing to do with Egghead. It's all about Wapple and Vivi with Morgans and everything, okay? So, interesting. Next chapter, next time we see York, chapter 1075, it is literally just when we're cutting to all the different teams, you know, so like Stussy, Jinbei, Sanji's team, Nami, Edison, and Brooks' team, and then we just see York, Frankie, Usopp, and Lilith's team, okay? And once again, York is in the background, no one paying attention to her, just yawning, like, So, here's what I think happened. It's a little bit interesting, it's a little bit weird of all the timelines, but here's what's happened, okay? So they receive the phone call that, like, Pythagoras is investigating the lab. York gets up, goes over, attacks Pythagoras. Then nobody notices York is gone, so they all split up into different teams, right? They all go different directions or whatever, okay? And then York doubles back to the control room, kind of, and it's just like joins Frankie and Usopp's group. I can imagine Frankie, Usopp, and Lilith just beginning to walk through the lab like, man, we gotta find Vegapunk. I wonder where he's at. And then York just kind of like, oh, sorry guys, what's up? And then they're like, huh? Oh, yeah, sure, whatever. And then they just keep walking because they literally pay no attention to her, okay? And it makes sense once again. Why would they? Not to say they hate York or anything, but it's like she is, like, she's not as important, I guess, as the other Vegapunks are, because the other Vegapunks are all in charge of different inventions and different tasks. So they might view her as just like, oh, she just sits around and eats and sleeps all day because that's literally her job, but because of that, we're not going to pay attention to her all that much, okay? So, not to say they hate her, but the ability for her to just freely move around the lab and mess with the Frontier Dome and lock everybody out and give the orders to the Seraphim, it is totally feasible. She could have done all of that and then attacked Pythagoras and then doubled back to join Lilith, Frankie, and Usopp's group. All of that. And then in that same chapter, chapter 1075, that's when they run into S. Snake, and then she immediately walks over to S. Snake and just gets turned to stone instantly, okay? It's like she, like, wanted to turn to stone, all right? So that's fascinating there. And then in the last chapter, chapter 1078, when we got the reveal that it was actually York this whole time, remember, we had S-Snake destroy Pythagoras, so S-Snake had turned Lilith and Usopp to stone, and then Frankie was mostly turned to stone, and then she stepped on Pythagoras' head, causing that explosion, and then afterwards, it would have been really easy for S-Snake to go back over to York and then release the stone, release the petrification, and then she got up, and then she immediately made her way down into the lab where Shaka was, and so she shot him, and so the timelines are a little bit like, I know those are two different chapters, but it's totally feasible. However, something else that's interesting here is that Frankie was the only one in that group that was not completely turned to stone. Frankie was only partially turned to stone by Perfume Femur, okay? So, and he could still talk and he could still see, okay? Just half of his face was stone. So, it's possible maybe S. Snake looked at Frankie and did not view him as a threat anymore. Like, 70% of his body is turned to stone. He can't move. He can't do anything. So then S. Snake went over, turned York back to, human. And then she's like, okay, thank you, S. Snake. I have to go deal with the Stella body now. And then she goes down to the lab. Frankie might know about this. Frankie might be the only person that might have actually seen this and might have been aware of it. Maybe he did not see it, because there was a very large explosion that caused after Pythagoras' head blew up. So it's possible that it could have turned into a dog and pony show. No, wait, what is the definition of this? An elaborate or overblown presentation or event. Yeah, that counts. That counts, kinda. It was a very elaborate event for York to turn into stone and then York to remain there in that state while S. Snake fought all the other members. Usopp, Lilith, Frankie, turned them all to stone and then blew up Pythagoras' head. Giant explosion. That's a dog and pony show, really. There you go. There it is. That works. Okay. So Frankie might have seen that, or it might have been obscured by the smoke. Either way, Frankie's gonna be the key to solving this arc. I guarantee it. He's going to be the one to show up. Okay, yeah. Maybe Frankie can deattach his... He only had his left arm free. Frankie might be able to deattach his left arm, and then move around all of Egghead and be like, hello, everyone. I'm Frankie's arm. I'm here to save the day. All right, don't laugh, because Frankie could have totally done that. It's totally feasible that Frankie could have, all right, in case I'm ever trapped, I will deattach my limbs, and then my limbs will go and help the Straw Hats. Or the left arm of Frankie falls out and then transforms into a miniature Frankie and is, like, running through the hallways. Like, I could see Frankie building that. Don't say Frankie was unable to do something like that. He totally could have done something like that. Or maybe the little orb, the little orb opens up and a little army of tiny little Frankies are like running through the lab. Like that would be cool. Lego Frankies. That would be neat. All right. Now, what's her motivation, though? Why is she doing this? And she says this to the Stella body at the end of the last chapter. She says, I'm going to be a celestial dragon, and, I want to live at Marie Joie, and I was there once. All of the Vegapunks took a field trip there, basically. Probably the same time that Vegapunk met with the Gorosei was the same time there that maybe the satellites were there. Maybe it was a little later. I bring this up because the Gorosei themselves only mentioned they met Vegapunk once. And I think that was during the flashback where Vegapunk was a lot younger, and this was like right before Ohara, a couple years before Ohara. That's when Vegapunk met the Gorosei. Now, it's possible Vegapunk and the satellites could have went to Marie Joie probably several times later in life, but didn't meet the Gorosei, because meeting the Gorosei, even if you're Vegapunk, that is a big deal. Okay, so they probably did go to Marie Joie a couple of times since then, but didn't go to see the Gorosei every single time, okay? So at some point, though, they met the Tenryubito. York became aware of their existence, and she was like, I want to be like them. Now, a lot of people have, like, hyposited why that she wants to become a member of the Tenryubito, okay? Now, Vegapunk, of course, is like, why would you want to be one of them? Those are horrible people. Of course, York does not care about their actions. She cares about their status. One such example of this theory is that, well, all the Tenryubito do all day is live in luxury. All they do is just sit around and eat and sleep, and they don't do much of anything, okay? They live luxury. So York, being the embodiment of desire and greed, is like, I want to live like that. But I have a problem with this theory, because if that was all she wanted to do, that's literally all she does do right now. She literally has no other job other than just to eat and drink and sleep and poop. That's all she does right now. The only difference being a Tenryubito in that regard, if that's all she wanted, was she would be doing that in maybe a solid gold castle on a solid gold bed made of the down feathers of the most rare extinct birds on the entire planet. I mean, maybe that's all she needs for motivation. Like, yes, I want to be a Tenryubito so I could sleep on the nicest bed of all time, and have the greatest food of all. But, like, I would imagine the food is pretty good on Egghead. Luffy and Chopper and Bonnie didn't seem to complain when they were using the vending machine thing. And, I'm sure the bed is pretty soft. It's a synthetic mattress, I'm sure, but it's like the science country. I'm sure I'm sure all of her needs were pretty much met in terms of that regard. Also, considering the fact her main job is to sleep and eat, I'm sure that Vegapunk would have designed it to make sure it was as comfortable as possible for her to fulfill those needs. You know what I mean? Right, okay. So I don't think that's the only reason. I don't think that's the main reason. They're like, oh, I want to become a Tenryubito just so I can sit around all day and sleep and eat and do nothing. I'm like, that's literally all what you already do. So I think it is more just about that greed and desire and the status of the Tenryubito. The Tenryubito are at the height of the world. They are revered as gods to pretty much the rest of the world. Okay, that's the way they're set up, and they live in the upper realm. So that would seem very appealing to the Vegapunk that embodies desire and greed. Also, interesting way to look at it is that Vegapunk separating his mind into those 6 different bodies that embody different aspects of him, that kind of ended up shooting him in the foot. Because if he just stayed into his main body, yeah, the idea is he still has all of the same satellite emotions in him. They all came from him. So Vegapunk did have desire and greed, just like every human being does, you know, to an extent, inside of him, but it was balanced with all those other emotions. So if Vegapunk had just stayed in his original body, he never would have betrayed, you know, science and, you know, it's like, oh, I will betray all the Straw Hats and then I will join the Tenryubito. Nothing like that. But now that he's separated each of these bodies, York is literally the undiluted, like, aspect of desire now. All of the desire and greed got siphoned out of Vegapunk and got put into York. Just like Shaka embodies good, Edison embodies creativity, Pythagoras embodies wisdom. That's all, like, that's their main emotion that they're running on right now, okay? So, yeah, greed, the Greed OS is what York is running on right now. Greed OS, yes. Still works better than Windows Vista, surprisingly, okay? So it would make sense why she would immediately go with this. Now, another question is, because she's the one that leaked all this information to the Gorosei. We saw that in the chapter. She's the one that contacted Marijua and let them know, I would like to speak to your manager, please. And she told the Gorosei and everything. And at the end of the chapter, she says to Vegapunk, I'm going to be a Tenryubito, implying that she struck a deal with the Gorosei that if she would have eliminated Vegapunk or all the other Vegapunks, they would make her a Tenryubito. I'm calling BS on that one because, yeah, now, York might be very duplicitous, very greedy. York might not have a lot of common sense here because I don't see the Tenryubito accepting York into their group. I don't see the Gorosei making good on their promise, on their agreement. There's just no way. There's no way because, like, Vegapunk is a threat. That's why they're eliminating him, okay? Because Vegapunk got too smart for his own good, basically, and started researching the Void Century. Well, York is a Vegapunk. So the Gorosei are just going to be like, all right, we're going to sunk cost fallacy this. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so one of the Vegapunks started to study the Void Century in a way that we do not want him to do. We got to eliminate him. You know what? Eliminate all the other satellites as well. Also, by the way, remember when Cypher Pole Zero, when Kaku, Stussy, and Lucci were arriving, remember, he took them out. He drew them in the paper, and he's just like, hey, these are the 6 bodies of Vegapunk. We need to eliminate all of them, okay? So I think it's pretty clear that the government gave the orders to Cypher Pole Zero, eliminate all of the Vegapunks, okay? Of course, they were going to say anything they wanted to York, where York is like, I'm going to tell you all this information about Vegapunk, and you can eliminate all the 5 other satellites and the Stella, but make me a Tenryubito. Of course, the Gorosei are going to be like, oh, yes, that sounds reasonable. I suppose we could do that. You know, no duh. They're going to say yes to that, and then at the end, it's like she's going to be eliminated like all the rest. Even if they did believe her as like, okay, yeah, you know, you won't betray us, you know, they'll take her into Tenryubito, they're still going to be worried because they're going to be like, okay, this is still a member of the Vegapunks. This is still a fragment of Vegapunk's brain, and Vegapunk betrayed us, so who's to say that she's not going to betray us? Also, she's the embodiment of desire and greed. I mean, come on. All right, it's like we literally have a Vegapunk as the desire of greed living in Marijua. Maybe she might betray us someday. Nah, she's fine. They're just going to eliminate York. They're not going to, yeah. So York might be very smart, but she might be lacking in some common sense, probably because she spends most of her time just eating and sleeping, so she doesn't really know much about, like, social interaction and all that. Is she working alone? I don't think she is. I think I want Caribou to be involved in this somewhere because he's just there. I mean, it's just silly to have him there on the island without doing anything with him, especially since this has been a weird story arc with Caribou where he's kind of just always there and he just shows up and he's just like, oh, Straw Hats, I have food. And he's like, okay, bye. And he's like, now I'm on the ship. It's just like, you know, Oda could have gotten rid of Caribou a long time ago, but he's like a cockroach. He just kind of never leaves. All right. He's just kind of always there. Right. And so it's like, all right, you could have Caribou trying to leave and then York finds him and just like, you'll listen to me. And you're like, okay. And so maybe it's like York and Caribou. I threw out in the review it's possible York could have been hacked, you know, because York all she does is eat and sleep. It would be very feasible for somebody to like hack into her, you know, mainframe or her computer CPU motherboard. I don't know anything about computers, but like getting into her brain and then basically, you know, taking her over, and, you know, none of the other Vegapunks would notice because all she does is sleep and eat. So, you know, she could have been somebody else for a few months now, and it's like that was the big shock moment, okay? I was following Artor, though, on Twitter, and he said something kind of interesting. So at the end of the chapter, when York is having that conversation with the Stella body, the way that she talks, if you take it literally from the Japanese, is this very trendy kind of way that she talks. So, like, a translation that, like, Artor used was like, hey there, Stella, I'm going to take you out and become a member of the Tenryubito, like, Sha. You know, like, some, not really like that, but you know what I mean? She talks like Kami from My Hero Academia, kind of. You know, it's like, that's how York speaks, which is really funny to me. Okay, so there's that. There's the whole S Flamingo thing, because Doflamingo was a Tenryubito, so maybe S Flamingo wanted to be a Tenryubito, and so York wants to be a Tenryubito. So yeah, once again, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for her to want to be a celestial dragon just for the perks of eating and doing nothing, because that's what she already does. So there's, if maybe they were working on S Flamingo, and then S Flamingo corrupted her in some way, and that's actually S Flamingo's body, in the body of a giant woman. Weirder things have happened in One Piece, ladies and gentlemen. This is a real dog and pony show if I ever saw one. Okay, well, anyway, that's the video talking about that. So let me know how you feel about the reveal of York. I really don't think we're done yet. I don't think we're done with this. I don't think it's just going to be York was the traitor the whole time. That's it, because that's another twist that Oda could pull. It's like, you thought it was just this person, when in reality it was this other person. I'd be like, oh, doubled layer mystery. Maybe even the elusive triple layered mystery. But let me know how you feel about the reveal now, and if you think this is it, like it's just a dead end, like, nope, York was the traitor, that's all we needed to know, or if there's some other pieces to the puzzle here. There's other machinations happening behind the scenes. Yes, okay. Anyway, moving on to Snake Facts, and I finally got around to making an intro for Snake Facts. It's not the greatest or the most clever, but here it is. Yeah, I get it, because Solid Snake from the Metal Gear. Okay, so anyway, today's snake fact, we are talking about the teeniest, tiniest snake in the entire world. And I'm, of course, referring to the Barbados thread snake. And Barbados thread snake? What are you doing here? Last time I heard, you were in Barbados. That was a Futurama. Okay, anyway, so the Barbados thread snake, very, very tiny snake, okay? To the point where it looks more like a worm or like a small little millipede or something like that. On average, they're about 10 centimeters in length, so that's pretty tiny. And the largest member of this species is a respectable 10.4 centimeters. So the average is 10 centimeters. The largest example ever found in the wild, 10.4 centimeters. So they're pretty tiny. They're only about as wide as a noodle of spaghetti noodle. So there you go. You know how like the danger noodles? Well, this isn't much of a danger noodle, but it is a noodle. And they only weigh about 0.6 grams. As the name would imply, they are native to Barbados. However, there's a lot of deforestation in Barbados over the years because a lot of it has turned into a vacation resort. Although, I don't know, I'm looking at it here. There looks like to be some decent clumps of trees that maybe these snakes could live. I don't know. I'm imagining they need a much larger forest, but God, Barbados looks beautiful. I would love to visit someday. They seem to eat mostly just termites and ant larvae. They're pretty tiny, so they can't really have a lot of options there. But yeah, that's the tiniest snake in the entire world. Just wanted to mention that. So that's cool. All right. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Teching signing out. Now, I'm just going to walk off camera over here. Just don't pay attention to me. I'm not doing anything.